this community. Time for Talk is a community betterment service designed to cooperate with our local community betterment program. Tonight, Rosemary takes us by means of portable camera out of our studios and maybe into your neighborhood. And now, it's time for Talk.
If you have any interest at all in old cars, if you have any interest in seeing old cars restored, this is your show tonight. We did a show some 2 or 3 years ago with Marty Fowler doing restoration of old Corvettes, and there's a beautiful, there's a turquoise Corvette sitting right here that without a doubt he has redone. I don't know who this might belong to. The Route 66 Restoration and Supply that's behind me, is still Marty Fowler. He's moved to new quarters, but he's still restoring old cars. Now, these old cars usually belong to someone that he's known far and wide, has a great reputation, goes to judge car shows, and loves this work. We're going inside. He's working on an old car that we just learned about, and we're going in and see what it is. Not a Corvette. It's an entirely different kind of thing. We're going in and look at what he's got. He probably has it all apart, and we'll see what he's doing with it. Promised you a look inside at some restoration work going on, and here it is. Marty, it is a what?
A 1937 Cord. It's not a Ford, it's a Cord. That's C-O-R-D.
C-O-R-D. Okay, now they made these, it's not a Chevy or a Ford. What company made this?
Well, it's an American car. A lot of people that come in here think it's European, but it's an American car made by the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Company in Indiana.
Okay, now Duesenberg, I remember was Duesenberg more famous than the Cord?
Yeah, it was more famous at the start because it started before Cord, and it was the Duesenberg brothers that started the car company, and they set out to make the foremost American car when they started, and they did it.
Okay, now, isn't this way ahead in design of everything else that was on the road in 1937?
Well, pretty much. They had a lot of firsts on this car that the big three as we got now are just now putting in their cars, and it's fairly interesting.
The big three are just now putting in their cars?
They have been, recently. They weren't doing it in 37.
Like what?
Well, this car is a front-wheel drive car. I don't know if you can see it all, but all the mechanics to drive the car is on the front axle, and it gives the car better traction. So they were doing this.
And the old A model and T model?
No, they just had a 4-cylinder and rear drive and real simple. This is very complicated, especially for 36 and 37, but Cord also did it in 29. They started with this in 29, so it wasn't brand new to Cord in 36.
Okay, so what happened to them? What happened to the company?
Well, these were not cheap cars. This car cost about $3,000 in 1937, and a Ford was $500. So you can see everybody didn't own one.
Oh, okay.
And the Depression had hit in 29, and in 36 and 7 we were still in the middle of it, and there wasn't a lot of market for big luxury cars like this. The company went under because they let it go under. There was enough money in the E.L. Cord companies to bail it out, but they made a decision not to.
Okay. Now, you have, how long have you worked on this car? Is it yours?
It's not my car, it's a customer's car, but...
Do you ever wish you had a car that you work on?
I wish I had them all. I wish I had a big garage and had every one of them in it. I wish they were all mine.
I mean, doesn't it hurt you? Is it like giving away a kid?
Almost, but it's a real pretty kid when we get through, and we're real proud of it. Like, everybody's proud of their kids when they grow up, so this one's kind of grown up.
Now, is everything on here like the original equipment?
Yes, ma'am. Everything is as close as you can possibly get it.
Okay.
If you remember, last time we were interviewed, we were finishing up that green Corvette.
Yes.
Well, we started on this one right after that.
Oh, you did?
About 2 months later, so that's how long it's been.
Okay, now how long?
September 88.
Okay, September 88. Okay, and you hope to be through with this when?
Next month, I hope.
Don't count on it. Don't count. Now, talk to me. This is a gorgeous car.
It's a fabulous automobile. Let me just tell you some of the features of this car.
I've never seen tires like
Well, these are large wheels. These are 16-inch wheels, and they call them gangster white walls, but the style back then...
Gangster?
Gangster
white?
In all the gangster movies, the gangsters run around in big cars, and they got big white walls, so they call these gangster white walls. But everything that was stylish back then had to have big white walls, so All these cars had big white walls.
Okay, all right. This doesn't look like it's been on the ground.
No, it hadn't. It's a reproduction tire, but Goodyear and some of the major producers make tires for these old cars, thank goodness, or you couldn't drive them.
Okay.
But they try to put the original treads like they had. They call this diamond tread because you can look in the center of the tread and it looks like diamond shapes.
Marty, do you have a lot of homework to do to know exactly how to put this thing back together? What shape was it? Where did it come from?
Well, the fellow that owns it now bought it from a Auburn Cord Duesenberg collector in Illinois who had it for years and years, and I won't say where in Illinois, but this guy has been scraping these cars up since the 40s. And he has buildings just with these old cars just backed in them. He said someday, you know, I might do something with that, and he may have 30 of these cars. I've been to his place, and it's unbelievable.
You just drool, don't you? You just drool.
They're all unrestored, you know.
Yeah,
Now, this car, he bought it had already been redone in 1963 in Oklahoma.
Was it redone right?
Well, for 1963, it was done fairly nice.
Okay, all right. Now, what you talked to me about front-wheel drive. Is what I'm looking at got something to do with front-wheel drive?
This is the front-wheel drive unit. The transmission and everything sits forward of the radiator. So all this out here is transmission. And the engine sits behind. It's just backwards of a regular car.
Uh-huh.
And it has independent front suspension. This wheel will move up and down independently of that one. So that's pretty neat for 1937.
Okay.
And this is the shifting mechanism for the transmission. It was what they called a semi-automatic. I won't go into it, but it was a lot neater than just a regular clutch car.
Mm-hmm.
They were working on an automatic transmission, and of course the company quit before. But I feel like if they'd have gone a couple more model years, they'd have had automatic transmission.
Did Ford and Chevrolet borrow any of the ideas that these? What would keep if they'd come out with this? What would keep the other, the cheaper cars?
Eventually, the other cars would have it. And if you'll notice, in 1966, Oldsmobile came out with a Tornado, which was a front-wheel drive, big V8 American car. That's the exhaust pipe sticking out there.
That's exhaust pipe?
Yeah.
What was that we bumped in with our knees at the tail?
That's the work all comes out the back. But okay, it's hard to imagine. This engine was pretty well ahead of its time, and we'll get into it. But when the car is put together, these pipes actually show on the outside of the car, and they go.
Oh, I've seen pictures of these.
They go from the hood into the fender, and then all this is hidden by the fender. But you see this part right here between the hood and the fender.
It looked like a race car.
Looked like a race car, exactly.
But it really did have a purpose.
Yeah, it's actually functional. It goes from the exhaust manifold down to the pipes. It was real racy looking in 37.
Okay.
This engine is a V8 engine, which in 37 was relatively scarce. Ford had them. In 32, Ford started with V8. But not too many other people did. Most of the 8s were still straight 8. Mm-hmm. You always hear that. Even Duesenberg was still straight 8. But the other unique features on this engine for Cords was it was a V8 with aluminum heads. The aluminum heads were almost unheard of. Cool better, and they're lightweight. And General Motors was doing that in the 60s, but not in the 30s.
Well, are people doing that now?
Yeah, a lot of things got aluminum heads now.
Oh, okay.
And also, this car is supercharged. And they're just now coming back with turbochargers and stuff on cars, and this car had it in 36.
Okay.
So make it run a lot faster. Give it more horsepower.
Now, I hear you talk about this, and you talk lovingly about this, but if you had your preference in what to drive, would it be a Corvette, or would it be one of these?
Well, I grew up with Corvettes, but I'd sure like to drive one of these one day a week.
Okay.
This would be a lot classier than a Corvette.
Okay.
They made several body styles of this car in 30.
Is that like Fisher body or something that I'm hearing?
No, Peyton is a style. It means it's convertible.
Okay.
This was manufactured by the Central Body Works in Indiana.
Okay.
But it was Gordon Burig's design. He designed the shape of the car, and they made it. This is the Phaeton. The Phaeton was a convertible with a back seat.
Okay.
And then they had what they called a Sportsman.
Oh, this is not the Sportsman.
The Sportsman is a convertible with no back seat. The trunk just comes up farther and eliminates the back seat.
Okay.
But we call these suicide doors. They open backwards. They're functional because it's a whole lot easier to get in and out of a car with a door that opens this way.
Yes, but why do you call it suicide door?
If you're going down the road at 50 miles an hour and one comes open, it's suicide.
Okay, all right.
It'll jerk you out of the car.
Now, Marty, is it? It's not leather, is it?
Yes, it's leather. Absolutely.
I thought it had to be leather in 1936 and 7. They didn't know about plastic.
Well, no, but they knew about cloth. And cloth was a lot cheaper.
Oh yes, but if you're spending $3,000 for a car, you're not going to have.
You had your choice, cloth or leather.
Okay.
But everybody pretty well took leather, except the four-door sedans. Why some people took cloth.
Okay.
But leather was what most people wanted. And this is all brand new leather. I think it's the prettiest dash you ever put in an automobile.
Really? Even now?
Even now, especially now. Like you said, they're all plastic now.
Okay. Let's look at the dash. What color? What color do you call this paint?
Well, I don't know if it shows up in the pictures, but it's rich maroon. It's real dark maroon, almost black.
It is. It's a beauty. And most of the cars then were black, weren't they?
A lot of black cars. But now, when you got in these high-priced cars like that, you see a lot more colors.
Yeah. Okay.
These cars had a lot of colors.
Okay. Marty said if we had a steering wheel, we'd go somewhere. Will you drive this?
Yeah, we'll get through maybe on the last episode where you can see us driving away.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Now, see what we're talking about with this.
This is a beautiful layout and design on dash. This dash and car has a lot more gauges than average cars back then. And back then, you got a speedometer and maybe something to tell you that the engine was too hot, and that's pretty much it. Mm-hmm. This car has a speedometer that goes to 150 miles an hour, so that tells you.
How fast would this car go?
Well, some people say they came with a little plaque over here on the dash that says they do 100.
Oh, okay.
And they all would.
They would?
Yeah,
okay.
they'd all do 100 easy. And they come with a 150 mile an hour speedometer and a tachometer to tell you how many revolutions the engine's doing, and a big oil pressure gauge, and a clock. And we got a fuel gauge here. This gauge is really neat. They designed the dash just like they wanted, but then they didn't have enough room for gauges. They needed more gauges. This gauge reads empty and full for gas, but if you push the button, it reads how much oil level's in the engine. So it's two gauges. It's got two scales. If you punch the button, you get one gauge, and if you don't punch the button, you get the other.
Okay.
So that's how they got two gauges in the place of one.
Okay.
There's a lot of cars like that now with electronic dashes. You can push a button and it'll read two different gauges, but 1936 there wasn't much.
Okay.
And then we have controls here for the headlights, and you can make the throttle idle up just from the dash. You can choke it. And this is the instrument lights for nighttime.
What is it?
And then we got the amp gauge over here. So it'll tell you if your generator's charging, and of course we got the radio.
Got a radio?
Got a radio.
Did you have an antenna?
Yeah, and you'll never see it. These people were so concerned with design, they did not want an antenna to mess up the look of the car. So the antenna is under the car.
Does that work all right?
Evidently.
It was a little messy to get out and put the antenna up.
Well, it stays up all the time. It's under the car. You're through with it.
Okay.
All right, this is the most unique feature on the car.
What, this right here?
This little handle right there, and that doesn't crank your vent window open. What does it say?
Retractable headlamps?
That's right. This has got hideaway headlights. That's late model. In 1936, this had hideaway headlights. They weren't electric, but when you wanted them up, you just cranked them up. Oh, it's an electromechanical shift, so needless to say, it's not average. But most cars had a big shifter in the middle of the floor. Mm-hmm. Well, this is a front-wheel drive car, so the transmission's not even here. So they had to figure out something else. And the other ones had them up here like this. And it was a big arm, and it took up lots of room. You had to move it around. They didn't want that. So they devised the electro-mechanical vacuum shift, and they put little numbers here to tell you what gear you wanted to go to. And you just moved it from one gear to the next. So if you were going down the road in first gear, and you knew eventually you were going to go to second, while you were still in first, you could put the shifter in second. And then just push the clutch, and it would shift when you pushed the clutch. It's a cigarette lighter.
All right, now we want to see the finished product.
Okay.
And we want to ride.
You won't hold me to a month, will you?
No, I won't hold you to a month. This year sometime would be nice. What are you going to work on next? Do you already know?
Oh, we've got 4 Corvettes back there in the back that we're already working on, so.
So, this keeps you out of meanness.
And another one of these cars on the Holden pattern.
Okay, 4 Corvettes and another Cord.
Another 37 Cord.
Okay. Have you ever done a Duesenberg?
No, but we might.
Tune in. The next thing you see may be a Duesenberg. I'd really like that. That's where our expression, that's really a doozy.
That's where it came from.
That's where it
That car
came
was
from.
so magnificent.
Okay.